So I've done a few things since I last logged in. Clean this up a little bit, change the locations. The files are now running in differencing disks, and so I'm going to focus on the domain controller for a moment. The domain controller, there's a few other settings that we need to go in and configure. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is our domain controller. Last video we installed Active Directory on this server 2012 R2. And when you open up Server Manager, it's almost always down in your toolbar. There's a few things to point out. Up at the top you can see tools, and these are all the ones that are built in and ones that you've installed. So you can see Active Directory is listed, DNS and DHCP. So once you have Active Directory installed, you need to configure DHCP and DNS for Active Directory. DHCP has to be authorized within the Active Directory, so you need a domain account. So you can unauthorize and authorize by right-clicking on the server name. Going into the properties here, you can see unauthorized server would remove it from Active Directory as an authorized DHCP server. And then once it's unauthorized, you can authorize it. You can add in a domain binding as well. So right now in IP4, I've created this network here, 172.116.0.0. This is a /24 server. I'm leaving out 50 IPs so that way we can use those for statics without having to mess with it. And you can see I've got my static domain controller listed, and then the Exchange server that we will be doing later. It received its IP address from DHCP, and you can see my reservation. So within here you can also set the options. So to set the scope options, you right-click the scope. You can click on Properties. Nope, that's not it. It should be Configure Options. So you have to do this on the reservation, and then the IP range that it is configured for. And you can set your options here if they're different for each range. I did them at the server level. Configure options. So any range that comes in will get this by default, and then if you have multiple ranges, let's say 172.10 or 16.10.1, you can give that a different router address, which is your gateway, than the other ones. And same with DNS, you can specify a DNS server, the domain name that you're going to be giving to everybody. And then way down here, the old legacy stuff is NetBIOS, Wins, which is this server as well. I did install that. I don't have a video on that, but Wins is pretty easy to install and configure. You can create other policies here. This is good for like if you're doing VoIP or your time settings, etc. So these are additional settings that are beyond what we're going to do in this video. After DHCP is configured, you need to go into DNS. You can see I created this goodhome.local, and in here you've got my servers that have been put in here. You've got a static as well as the DHCP. And then I also created, I don't have a reverse lookup, and we can do that now. And you can actually set this up to replicate to all DNS servers running on domain controllers within the domain or at the forest level. We'll go ahead and stick with the domain. and the reverse IP, and the network address 172.16.0. And then that's going to do a reverse lookup for those addresses. And then we're going to allow for secure dynamic updates. This is recommended for Active Directory. That way your connections are secure. And now in here you'll see that the domain controller is showing up, and we can be able to do reverse lookups. And this is the same server. I've got it in here twice, so delete. Yeah. So and then here's all the events logs that are happening at the same time. We can create up forwarders. Right now this is actually configured to forwarders. It has no forwarders configured. It is going to do the recursive lookups. Now if your Active Directory server is on the internet, it is highly recommended you do not do recursive lookups for a domain controller. But being that this is an internal server and nobody from outside the world, that is okay. So typically what you do is you set up a forwarder here to your ISP or to a bind server or some sort of secondary server. How I've done it before is set up a forwarding server being a bind Linux server, and then do zone transfers to that server, so that way, or set up static IPs or static ranges, so that way if your devices are external to the world, they still know where to go to find, for example, your mail server or a website, or where to authenticate to. So that's why we have those out there. So with those two set, this server is now ready for authentication. The other part that I'll show is the static IP. To do that, you would go down to your network card down here, network access, right click, open network sharing center. This is again on Windows 12 R2. I'm sorry, Server 2012 R2. You'll have your network cards listed here. You click on the one that you have, click on Properties, and then IP4, and then you can set up a static IP address and a static DNS server here. The 127.0.0.1 is the local address, and that address is essentially a self-assigned address so that it knows where itself is. So that gets you the network address, that gets you DNS, DHCP, and then the next video I will show you all the prerequisites to get Exchange 2016 installed, so that will be coming. Thanks.